I'm in the wrestling ring at the WWE. And in the blue corner is this guy from Cape Town. So welcome, it's good to be with you. I have a couple of thoughts prepared for today, but I'd really love for this to be a nice, engaging, interactive session. My energy is challenged a little bit this morning. I didn't get too much sleep. I've got a family member that was rushed into hospital at midnight. But it's all good. Everything's fine. He's under control. He's being treated. But you know what happens when you get those messages? You don't close your eyes. So I think I've got about an hour's rest. So forgive me if my energy kind of dips a little bit. But I'm with you for the next hour. And what I'd like to do is share with you some data. But before we do that, hi, Patricia. Thanks for the intro. Welcome. Give me a sense in the chat, and we're a small enough group, so thanks, Claire. So, you know, you can even unmute and we can just talk about it. If you kind of step back in your business or organization right now, what would you say is your main business challenge, or your sort of key leadership challenge right now? I'm busy looking down here, so I'm busy making some notes as I see. Claire, tell us what you mean by capacity.
We are, it's always a little bit risky, like talking about the business of ASBN in front of our members, but I also think it's really important to be transparent about where we are as a network. We have definitely hit another glass ceiling in terms of our capacity, our workload. So we're trying to grow. We have an amazing loyalty in ASBN. We work very hard for that loyalty, but at the same time, we're very aware that we have to keep bringing in fresh blood and fresh companies to give our current members new people to meet and engage with, particularly in an international capacity. And we're trying to like find that balance between managing the expectations of over 90 companies whilst bringing in new members, plus plugging in various projects to ASBN with a very, very small but dynamic team. So that's what I mean by capacity. It feels like we're just hitting a glass ceiling, and no doubt we will overcome it as business leaders. But yeah, that's our challenge right now.
Yeah, beautiful. And listen, don't worry about the vulnerability. We're in a very new era where we're kind of expecting that, and we, you know, if we really want to be of value and of service to the people that we're trying to serve, our vulnerability kind of makes it safe for others to do the same. My experience in the last little while of just being honest about where the business is at, also with a sense of overwhelm, has actually just created more overwhelm in the form of more opportunity. Because, you know, part of the reason why I partner with you is your authenticity. You know, so don't worry about the vulnerability. So capacity, I get it. It's a load. There's competing demands. We're sort of in an era of you know, where everything is a priority, and so we're recognizing that prioritizing on its own is not enough. We also need to get pretty smart at sequencing our priorities, or understanding the value of sequencing. Focus, thanks, Nicola. Thanks for adding the ever-changing priorities. David, tell us what you mean a little bit by relevance, if you don't mind.
Yes, sure. I think for me, I like the word that you've used, challenges, because I don't think they are challenges, but I almost embrace them because they're exciting. But I think the relevance is keeping up to date and in your as an expert, or your area of expertise, I enjoy it immensely, but you can't snooze, because as soon as you snooze, you potentially going to be left behind, and you want to be a voice that people will listen to and turn to if they need advice on something. So even I'm contradicting myself a tad, because it's something I love to do, but it means that you have to focus a lot of energy and keeping up to date and keeping relevant.
Yeah, get it. Thanks for that. So relevance, capacity, again, I think uncertainty we can all identify with. I was engaging with a new client in the sort of logistics space yesterday. They're a global business, massive business. And we had an interesting discussion about, what are those new management and leadership literacies that are needed to be able to thrive in a disruptive environment. And one of the things creating uncertainty is probably for the first time ever, we have people who have full-time jobs who are also anxious about their full-time jobs. So it's not just a level of anxiety in the world around, work and being able to earn enough to take care of the people you care about, but even people who are gainfully employed, in traditional businesses that have been around forever still have a measure of anxiety that wasn't there a couple of years ago because of the kind of uncertainty that we're having to grapple with. Patricia, tell us more about the time management, if you don't mind. Thanks for that.
I'm just really bad at it. I'm really, if I start work really early in the morning, I'm very productive and I don't have any interruptions. But once I start getting interruptions, it's hard to get back in the groove again. And meetings during the morning, delightful though this is, are always problematic, because this is when I can really concentrate best.
Yeah, I think I feel that with you. And maybe we can share some thoughts or perspectives this morning that may be useful in this regard. In actual fact, for most of the things that you are raising. So before I share with you some data, our business 3 I's. I often get asked where does and there's the great branding. Thank you, Nicola. It's looking really fantastic. We take it with us wherever we go. But 3 I's, I often get asked what does the name stand for? It's basically 3 individuals that decided to start a business together a couple of years ago. And the name kind of stuck, and we stuck with it, and it's got a bit of a presence. So our work mainly at this point in time, I would say for the last 2 years, and certainly if I look at the pipeline for the next 18 months, is predominantly around helping organizational systems figure out how to thrive in disruption and chaos. So how do we work with some of these challenges that you're busy raising here and figure out how to turn them into opportunities to reinvent rather than be overwhelmed by them. Yeah, so that's the essence of what we do. So what I'm going to share with you is based on work happening currently globally across multiple sectors and multiple industries. And it's my pleasure to kind of share a couple of thoughts with you. But what I'd like us to do is, as we kind of go through it, let's just pause and chat and talk about what this means for us. So let me get the PowerPoint up quickly. I did practice beforehand. There we go. So you see the main presenter screen. Let me just hide the meeting controls. There we go. Cool. So the first piece of data. Now, I'm going to share a few things here which may seem a bit surprising. I want to just emphasize that the data is friendly. The data doesn't lie. The data may not be on our side, but the data, the data tells a story. and it doesn't lie. Sorry, I don't know why it's doing that. Is my presenter screen gone off now? Okay, sorry, just give me a second.
That's it.
Okay, trying to figure out how to make this smaller. Now I've got you on both screens. Sorry, just give me a second. No, that's not working. Sorry. Just bear with me. Now I've got you duplicated on two screens. What the heck is going on? Okay, let's go back in. Let's jump in here. Hopefully you can see that now. So a large percentage of our efforts in organizations and in our businesses actually fail. Now this is it's a piece of work that's done every couple of years by some of the big consulting houses. This one was done by McKinsey. This is a pre-COVID number, January 2020. So if you think about all the changes we bring in our businesses, the process policy systems, the capacity challenges, the more people that we bring on board, the new products and the new services, the numbers are not on our side. A large percentage of what we actually try to change doesn't yield the results that we're looking for. And there's a couple of reasons behind that. One of them has to do with understanding the speed at which we are currently having to operate. Okay, so I'm not surprised that you talk about capacity issues, relevance, uncertainty, focus, time management. So this number here, this is a typical S-curve. This is a typical business life cycle. Pre the year 2000, we would go through big changes once every 75 years, actually once every 30 to 40 years, because the business cycle was 75. So 30 odd years for the up and 30 odd years for the down cycle. This is globally, yeah. So if you think of, for many of us, maybe parents and grandparents only ever working in one sector or one industry their whole lives, with lots of relative stability, speed to market was particularly slow because we focused on perfection. We focused on perfection. It's a very important statement. But with also a high barriers to entry, competition was, particularly low. There's a particular leadership style that worked there, and a particular way that we engaged our customers that kind of worked there. Around about 2000, there's a big jump to 15. So this is mid-90s, 2000. And the number that we're currently on is 6 years. We've just done a recent survey. I'm hoping you can see that because I've got everything showing on the same screen, so I'm hoping nothing is blurred out. This is a recent survey, about 500 global responses. This is early data. The survey is still open. It will run till the end of September. We'll hope to get those responses up to about 2,000 by the end of the survey. But the question was, how often do you need to be reinventing yourself to survive and thrive? And basically, the bulk of the responses are saying 3 years or less. Now, start thinking about, what does this mean for us from a capacity point of view? What does this mean from a leadership or a management point of view? And for those of you running businesses, where might you be applying an old solution that comes out of these long cycles to a new challenge or a new situation? We may have worked for the long cycles, but not necessarily going to work for you in the short cycles. So let me just pause there and just check what's going on for you. Not all together now.
When I'll share my thoughts. When I look at those cycles, it gives me a level of anxiety in a way, because I feel like we're already like juggling so much, trying to just manage what we're doing, and then it's like, oh crap, now we need to also like add reinvention on top of this. It's like, how are we going to manage this very necessary piece as well as maintain businesses? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there's another component to that, Nicola, which is, you know, how do I move beyond just surviving today and making sure that I'm also putting in the building blocks to make sure that the business and I can actually thrive tomorrow. And it's finding that dance, that polarity between the two. Most of us tend to be kind of stuck in firefighting mode in our businesses, even large organizations. And we know that's not sustainable because it creates chronic fatigue. And, you know, the body can't function for heightened periods of time on adrenaline and cortisol. It's just not sustainable. So I hear you on there's a little bit of a scariness for me also when I see that. What else sort of triggers for you when you see those numbers? Belinda, Clint, David.
Good morning, Gary. Nice to finally see you face to face after all our WhatsApp messages that had me in stitches, I might add.
Likewise, morning.
Okay, so for me, and I like what you mentioned earlier about being honest and vulnerable. I know you didn't use those words, but so for me, I find that running your own business is hectic, especially, I mean, if it was difficult before COVID, it's even worse after COVID now, because many businesses went through a downturn, lots of changes happened. And I just think that people have to reinvent themselves more often. So that survey that you did is actually interesting statistics, and it would be interesting to see that in about 2 years' time again, to see how companies, how they've changed since then. And I think the companies that we work with, like Claire was saying, to get fresh ideas in and fresh companies and fresh people or new people for our companies to interact with, that can be a little bit intimidating, because when it comes to capacity, we've got 90 members to manage within ASBN, but that doesn't leave behind member number 1 that joined. So you cannot place your focus on member number 91 and leave member number 1 behind, because they're still ongoing. So when I said distractions and time management, I laughed when Patricia commented on she just can't do it, because sometimes I feel like that too. It's like, you know, I can be so busy, and then somebody walks in the room and it's almost like I welcome the distraction. And I know I shouldn't, because I've got lots to do and enough to keep me busy. But, you know, it's that. And then on a personal level, I also find that I do my best work when I'm under pressure, but I don't want to be under pressure all the time. I also want to be able to relax and put things in boxes and say, okay, fine, so I'll get to this at 11 o'clock and that at 12 o'clock. And it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. So I'm glad you kind of taking us where we need to go in this conversation. David, or anybody else that wanted to add anything around, you know, what triggers when you see these numbers?
Yeah, I'm amongst some wise commentary here. I have to say, you're stealing all my thinking, but it's nice to know that people, we all sitting in the same boat to varying degree. And I look at, you know, some of my clients who are in completely different places, but I've got really cutting edge, innovative thinkers. And then, I mean, from today, early this morning, I went to see a shipping company in Durban, and I might as well have walked into 1918, because the building, the energy, the way they do business, but they've done the same business for 150 years and it's been successful. It's simple. But even they sensing, even though it might be they're dragging themselves out of where they've always been, they realize too that they can't stay the same. And it's probably even more uncomfortable for them because everything has been how it should have been. And as we know, COVID shook up everybody. But there is that's why I just love the slides that you've shown, that you have to keep up to date, to keep with the times, to stay relevant, to stay in business at the end of the day. You need to find your way where you can stretch. I suppose that's what I'm trying to say, because we've got different stretches that we need. And like as Belinda shared, it also adds complexity when you've got so many people to look after, and they're all different. And you've got to find that balance.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for that insight. And yeah, Belinda, thank you. Change is hard. Finally, somebody who's, this is not meant to be a confessional today, but yeah, I'm glad that you're honest about that. You know, we played in recruitment for a while, a couple of years ago, and I always remember there's like two lies that people tell you in the interviews. You know, when you say, so why should you, you know, we employ you here at ASBN and bring you into this awesome organization. Then they tell you two lies. Number one, I love people. Because like after 6 months, you're saying to HR, come and help us pick up the bodies here from these people who love people. And number two, they tell you they love change. Because the reality is that most of us are hardwired for certainty. And there's a difference between loving variety and enjoying change. And typically, we are not hardwired for change. There's a small percentage of the world's population that's actually the complete opposite, but it's not the bulk of us. Yeah. I heard a beautiful comment yesterday that went something along the lines of, we are designed for a perfect world. They were talking about business. Our business is designed for a perfect world, but nothing in our world is perfect, including us. And we make no allowances for the imperfection. In our strategies, we make no allowances for the fact that we're going to be disrupted, that things are going to change and things are going to shift. Yeah. I mean, I think I may have raised this before, but did we know about COVID? Yes or no?
We knew something was going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah, so this slide's in a different deck, but we actually knew about COVID. So if you look at the World Economic Forum global risks reports, and you see where infectious diseases rank in probability and impact, we knew about it a while ago. We didn't know the name, but we knew it's coming. We know about climate impact. We know about heightened unrest and failure of social systems. In actual fact, something that should be of interest and concern to all of us, the current global risks outlook for the World Economic Forum, the 2022 one, if you can get your hands on it. If we've got some time, I'll pull it off here. I think I've got it on the system and put it in the chat. But what's of interest is one question for me. Global CEOs were asked, what is your outlook for the next year, positive or negative? And the overwhelming response, in actual fact, 66% was negative. Now, if you think about that, if the predominant outlook for the future is negative, it translates potentially into increased discontent, disengagement, and unrest. Yeah. So in South Africa, you know, the horrific KZN challenges, I'm not convinced we've seen the last of that. And certainly in many parts of the world, we're seeing this heightened level of unrest and discontent for a number of reasons. And that impacts our businesses, you know, that impacts how we thrive and survive in what I call these short cycles. But there's something else. There's something more almost pervasive that is starting to emerge with us having to figure out how to manage ourselves, how to manage our businesses, manage our client expectations differently in these short cycles. You see, I'm not convinced that we struggle with change. We all, as we're sitting here, we've dealt with maybe very traumatic changes in our lives. What we're currently struggling with is what you've alluded to in many of your comments, which is the pace or the speed at which we're having to move. It requires a very different mental orientation. It requires us to be looking after ourselves physically. Because you know what happens if we're physically not well, you know, energy is low, problem-solving capability is diminished, the energy we give to our relationships is diminished, and the ripple effect just goes on and on. So there's something more pervasive that's emerging, and I've posed it as this question: is there a deeper emerging issue that we should be paying attention to and that we need to be concerned about? And we believe there is. Globally, we're sitting with a predominantly stressed, anxious, and sad workforce. Now, this is even at an executive level. I am looking at, in our client environment, the number of C-suite executives checking out is unprecedented. Checking out in a sense of, listen, I'm out of here for 3 months, or I'll be back in 6 months. I'm not even sure if I'm going to come back, but I'm getting off this hamster wheel for now. Because the pace at which we're having to function and the complexity of what we're having to manage is not what we've experienced before. Of course, and I want to go back to the slide, there are those of us, and I think there are many of you in this audience this morning, we look at the cycle and we go, man, this is bloody scary. But where's the opportunity in here? Where's the opportunity? And of course, that's, you know, looking at it with an entrepreneurial mindset. So let me just pause here on this slide before we go into a couple of hacks that we see seem to be working in different places and maybe of value to you this morning. Does this land? Are you connecting with this? Are you seeing this in the environments that you're operating in? And I want to add, even from a client engagement point of view, when you're engaging with a client system where there's heightened levels of stress and anxiety, people don't think properly. Our decision-making capability is actually very largely diminished. And so client systems actually become indecisive. So no, Claire, let's talk about it next year. We're not going to move on that thing now. You know, but 3 months ago, they were eager to go. So we're seeing lots of indecisiveness. The indecisiveness is not because they don't have the budget or they don't have the money, but they may also be experiencing a sense or a feeling of overwhelm. We have in our current reinvention network, I think about 6 or 7 marketing companies, all throwing their hands up in the air, you know, about deals that they're struggling to close because of this. Yeah. And then some that are, you know, kind of just landing deal after deal, mainly because they're understanding that in their client environment, there's a shift that's busy happening. And so they need to be clever and creative about how they work with that. So are you seeing this where you are? That there's massive risk of burnout and fatigue? I see some heads nodding. So what can we do about it? And the fact that you're sitting here this morning means that you figured out some kind of coping mechanism for yourself. Maybe you haven't even figured it out, you just kind of fallen into it by default. I'll share with you one or two that's working for me personally, but I want to share with you some stuff that we picked up in different environments, different sectors and industries around the world. Here's the first one. Did you know that the human gait, in other words, the way that we walk, is as unique as our fingerprints? I did not know this until a couple of months ago. So if you think about it, the way that we walk, physically walk, is influenced by the weather, our weight, the terrain, as you see in the picture, the kind of shoes we've got on, our mood, and a whole host of things. Why is this important? Because it is impossible at an individual level to follow somebody else's footsteps perfectly. This is very important. It's impossible to follow somebody else's footsteps perfectly, but we can learn from their example. What does this have to do with business? Each business has its own unique gait. It has its own unique way in which it walks or runs, which is informed by the shareholders, the owners, the management team, the staff, the culture, the environment or the context that it's busy operating in or having to function in. And so as businesses, we cannot follow perfectly best practice that is working somewhere else. But we can learn from others' examples. So here's the lesson out of this, if you're not making the connection yet. Part of managing our energy in these short cycles is shifting from efficiency to effectiveness. Is shifting from perfection to forward movement. And we're noticing that some of the anxiety is being caused because we're trying to follow somebody else's footsteps perfectly. We're trying to follow what is working for another organization in a completely different context, in a completely different environment. And of course, you know, context always matters. My favorite example of context, in South Africa, what is the cheapest color motor vehicle to insure? Any guesses? Let me open up the comments here because I can't see it. White, yes, of course, white, yeah. Because every time we add pigment to the color, it increases the cost of the paint. If you go to North America or Canada, what's the most expensive color vehicle in Canada to insure? It's white. It is white. Why? Why? Here's an important lesson about context. It is white, not red, Belinda, it's white. Why white? It's got something to do with the weather. Absolutely, thank you, Claire. So it carries more risk. So they don't want white vehicles. So it's more expensive because of supply and demand. Yeah. So context always matters. One set of rules is not necessarily going to apply to a different context. So the first thing that can help us here, if we think about balancing today's needs or today's requirements, think about the theme of this session. You know, it's finding that dance between what do I need to do to survive today while I put in the building blocks to make sure that I can thrive tomorrow as a business. We've got to let go of perfection, and we've got to let go of trying to follow somebody else's footsteps perfectly. Figure out our own unique formula. May I give you an example in this regard? The whole work from home issue that's emerged globally. Yeah. Now, some organizations, even pre-COVID, just before lockdown started, already made the decision that this is going to be a permanent way of operating. Even locally, we have some some organizations that have made that decision as part of their strategy, that work from home is here to stay. I know I had some engagement with Britvic in the UK in the early stages of lockdown. Big global decision. This is how we're going to do it, and we're going to figure out how to make it work. Yeah. And then you have folks coming out quite publicly saying this will never work, and Elon Musk wanting to fire people, and we've got to force people back into the office, and Malcolm Gladwell saying you're crazy if you don't go back to the office. And what's interesting for me is how quickly the gurus get a backlash. You know, when this sort of popular opinion was popular maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but people have now found that they can make this work. They can balance the family needs and the work needs quite nicely. Doesn't work for everybody. I mean, there's some of us that were quite happy to get back to an office. We couldn't wait because we needed to focus, we needed to get things done. But I can tell you, there isn't one company in the world that has now figured out the panacea for this thing, the golden formula, that we can now go and copy paste or cut paste into our environment. And that's what I mean by we've got to figure out our own formula based on our own unique gate. Stop trying to copy what other people are doing. It is not going to work. In actual fact, in some cases, it's creating more anxiety than anything else. And this is where, you know, some of the big consulting houses, the big consulting gurus are very much to blame. Each organization has its own unique gate. Once we figure that out, we realize we have to build our own formula for success rather than relying on best practices of other people or other systems. The second one that can potentially help us function differently in these short cycles where we have to constantly be reinventing ourselves and our businesses to stay relevant has to do with finding the low-hanging fruit and chasing after those quick wins. Now, why is this important? Just think about this in terms of energy. Nothing gives a team more confidence than a win. And so it gives them confidence that things are getting better. But it's also building competence. It's building muscle, because nothing speaks louder than success. And so in the short cycles, we want to focus on the quick wins, the low-hanging fruit, the small reinventions, the things that we can rapidly prototype, rapidly test, and turn into quick wins. Yeah, please give me a comment in the chat if any of the stuff is resonating with you, or if I'm busy smoking my socks. And then the third one, that it's kind of connected to this one, and this has to do with fatigue. To your comments about overwhelm and focus and so many competing priorities, please, people, we no longer have the mental bandwidth or energy for all these bloody marathons in business. Long projects, long lead times. You know, we're not too sure. Sometimes we're building so long in the project, we forgot what the bloody issue was. We have to focus on shorter sprints with breaks. Short bursts of energy, and then a pause. Whatever that pause means in your environment. Is it a day's rest? Is it a week out? Is it, you know, we're running these campaigns, and maybe we're running 4 or 5 campaigns back to back, but we've got to build in breathing time. Whatever that means in your environment. Our people, and if I think of what's contributing to the stress and the anxiety, often in large systems and large organizations, people do not have the energy for long marathons anymore. So we need to focus on short sprints with breaks, and couple that with looking for those quick wins and the hanging fruit. And then the last, not last, I think there's one more interesting one. Has to do with decision making. Why do we say don't make decisions? You see, decisions kind of carry somewhat of a heaviness to it. And just think about your own experience and your own example. Decisions kind of have this note of finality to it. And it creates often a lot of the anxiety and the tension that we're feeling in the short cycles. So how do we play with it differently? Well, take the anxiety away, remove it, kick it out. The minute you do that, you start realizing that instead of making decisions, the other opportunity here is to run lots of experiments. And the minute you do that, especially with teams, resistance goes down almost immediately. And it reduces the fear of failure. After a few rounds of experiments or a few rounds of testing, you can then make a decision. You know, this thing has got legs, let's stick with it. We make this one of our standards, or this thing doesn't work, let's throw it out, let's try a different experiment. Remember, we're talking about how do I balance more effectively the needs of having to survive today, but at the same time, put the building blocks in place to make sure that I can thrive tomorrow. If I'm constantly in firefighting mode, I don't have the mental bandwidth to even be thinking about tomorrow. You know, we're very busy, but we're not paying attention to the future. And looking at that timeline, that's a discipline we have to all develop. In the long cycles, we used to put strategy and visioning and forward thinking in the hands of a select few, you know, that go away once a year to the bush to come up with a strategy, and somebody else would then implement it. Now, we all need that new intelligence. One of the new intelligences is called VQ, visioning intelligence. You're familiar with the other four, eh? The basics: EQ, IQ, SQ, PQ. Huh? Emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, your sense of, not religion, but your sense of what is meaning and purpose. Physical intelligence, which is the you know, the physical body, like, you know, do you know what your weight is and your blood pressure and your cholesterol, and are you getting sufficient rest and proper exercise, are you eating properly? And then IQ. But around about 2016 onwards, there's been the emergence of 3 new intelligences. One of them is VQ, visioning intelligence, this ability to work with tomorrow, to come back and pull people with me, this sense-making ability to work with what is emerging and what I'm seeing in the data, and then understanding how to respond. But I don't have the capacity to do that if I'm focused on just firefighting. Not to say that firefighting is not important. I mean, we've got to sort the fires out. But if we run from one crisis to the next, then it becomes chronic. Yeah. And so rather than make decisions, this hack I found most useful for myself: run lots of experiments. Some of the experiments will stick, a few you'll have to throw out, but it reduces fear, it reduces anxiety, and it removes that heaviness or finality. Let me pause there, because that's the essence of what I have to share with you today, before I share with you an invitation. Let's just talk quickly about what's landing for you. And please, you can unmute.
Sorry, Gary, I'm going to speak on behalf of Lisa. She's actually one of our board advisors. She just had a little baby. Thanks for joining us, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
She just left a she's left a couple of comments in the chat. I don't know if you want to...
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Lisa.
Yeah, no, I'm really enjoying it. Like Claire said, I've got a little one in my arms at the moment. I'm in the thick of it. Also had no sleep. But yeah, I've been trying to type with one hand. I found the hacks really useful, especially around the, you don't have to make those big decisions, and to sort of basically, give yourself a break and try things out. I did put in the chat that one of my challenges is this balance between, I know I need to reinvent, and I'm really passionate about social impact, for example. I'm in the property industry, for anyone who doesn't know. I source developments and investments for organizations and individuals globally. And I've got a real passion for moving away from traditional investing and more sort of doing well by doing good. And so living in South Africa, I'm very aware of the need for social impact property investments and developments. And I'm involved in developing a few at the moment in townships and various. But my challenge is that in making these sort of pivots in my career and within my business, whilst I absolutely believe in the long-term need for it, and I think that real estate investing is really going to change, in the next 10 years or so. As an early adopter, it does mean that I come across, there's clients that either need, re-educating or letting go of, and that kind of thing. So in the short term, there is a financial pressure in that, I have to forego some things to kind of stay on this long-term goal of this pivot and this reinvention, for want of a better word. And obviously, having just had a baby, I've now got 3 kids at home, and there's a lot of pressure, so it's easy to go for what's easy and what I've always done, than putting the energy and the effort and the foregoing the financials in order to go with what I think in my gut is where I should be going. So yeah, that was my comment. Sorry if that was a bit long-winded.
No, lovely. Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I suppose, for many of us, particularly running business or enterprise, there is that tension between keeping the lights on and sort of more juicy stuff. But there's also that tension around, some of that juicy stuff may be for today, but there's other things that I need to be paying attention to, like resourcing or developing capability or building the network or finding collaborative partners, which is really about sustaining into tomorrow. And I think we're not saying, when we say focus on the quick wins, that the other wins and the big ticket items are not important. But from an energy point of view, if all you're ever doing is focusing on those long projects, the long gains, it can be terribly demotivating. It just sucks the life out of the system. And in our teams, it kind of does the same. And we've got projects, we're overwhelmed, we can't keep up with the work. But some of the projects we've been working on for 18 months, one has taken us 2.5 years to bag, and we're just about to kick off. But if all I ever focused on was that, I'd have given up ages ago. I've been so despondent. So I've got to make sure that we've got shorter, smaller, quicker wins, and also to make sure that they're viable. That it's not just for the sake of being busy. Claire wanted to spit out something.
I can't remember what I was going to say, but I'll tell you one thing that really, really gnaws me as a business owner. I'm also a visionary. Like, I know I want both our companies to be, but sometimes I have to spend a lot of time on the internet with people on LinkedIn to understand like the flow and where trends are going, so we can like nip in and plug into them, as you have brought up, Gary. But sometimes it makes me feel really pressured, particularly in the international business landscape in Africa, where ASBN has a role, and I'm constantly subjected to these multi-million-dollar deals like that are coming up on my timeline, and I'm just like, oh my goodness, we've connected a couple of members, and for me that's like a massive win, but it might not be these like 6-7 figure sums and these big VC investments, and I sometimes think I'm doing something wrong. And I start to feel like really pressured, and then it kicks the adrenaline in, and then I start to go into panic mode that I'm not doing something right.
Yeah, I think I feel that with you, but you know what I think what you're pointing to is the need to do things differently. Is operating model or mental model, way of functioning that's just needs to be radically different, because all those things that you're talking about are important. And just to, if I may close off with a quick thought experiment. I know we've got 3 minutes, but I may take 2 more extra minutes of your time if you don't mind. Let's do a quick thought experiment. And let's see if I can do it like this. You need a pen and paper, please. Are you seeing my main presentation screen? Eh? Yeah, you're not seeing the presenter view. So do you have a pen and paper? So, Nicola and Claire, you may remember this from Nadia's talk, so don't give the answer away, please. But let's assume for a moment that you are in the property game. Yeah, you own a large number of properties. How would you know that there's a trend starting, that there's something happening, that there's something going on? That let's say your properties are empty with no renters. When would you say there's a trend? At 5%, 10%? What's your number? Just write it down. Don't think about it too much, just what your gut is telling you. Write your number down. Got it? Yeah. Now, the smallest bacteria in the world has that many, with all the, I don't know what that number is, in 1 liter. That's the smallest bacteria in the world. It reproduces by doubling every minute. In other words, after 2 minutes, or after a minute, it's 2 with all those noughts. After 3 minutes, it's 4 with all those noughts. It doubles every minute. How long would it take that bacteria to fill the Pacific Ocean completely and kill everything in it, including itself? Write a number down. How long, and this is, you can go and look and see how many liters in the Pacific Ocean, but this is gut feel. The bacteria doubles every minute. Yeah, I know, Belinda, it's going to break the brain, but give me a number. It doubles every minute. How long would it take it to fill the Pacific Ocean completely, kill everything in it, including itself? Can you write a number down, please? Got it. May I give you the answer? Claire, what did you have?
A month.
A month, Nicola?
I thought it was a trick question. So I said, what has to say that this bacteria can't just coexist? Why does it have to kill everything?
Okay, now that is too deep for us today. Belinda, what's your number?
I got 30 days.
30 days. David?
I said a year.
A year. Patricia? Can't hear you. That's fine. You can put it in the chat if we can't hear you.
I said 10 minutes.
Lisa said 10
Yes.
minutes. Patricia?
I thought it was a trick question, Chief.
Okay, another trick question. Clint?
I said 1 minute because I would assume that the bacteria would absorb traits of other bacteria and make like of whatever it's
I know that's way too deep for this exercise. So here's the interesting thing, and Claire, I see Tracy joining us, so this may have been the other time that people got in their diaries. So here's the interesting thing about this exercise, which is the value for us around the speed at which things typically move. At 88%, at 88 minutes, 50% of the ocean is empty. And there's an actual way to work this out. If you're interested in the formula, I didn't work this out. A very smart person worked this out, and I'm happy to send you the calculation. But at 88 minutes, 50% of the ocean is empty. In other words, everything's looking fine. There's no trend, there's no issue. COVID, what the heck is that? What the problem is? You know, what war in Russia, Ukraine? You know, everything is fine. The ocean is blue or green, whatever it is in your part of the world. At 87 minutes, 25% of the ocean is filled. At 86, and so on and so on and so on. What's the point of this exercise? What is the point of this exercise? The fact that we always give ourselves more time than what the market actually allows. We always think we have more time than what we actually have. We always give ourselves more time than what the market actually allows. And the reality of it is that we actually do not have enough time. And so in conclusion, this happens to be quite fortuitous because our next Easy Reinvention Lab kicks off on the 29th of August. It's a 5-day process, but don't panic. It's not 5 full days. It's essentially 5 hours. It's 1 hour each day. And I think in the SAST time, I think it's either 5 or 6 p.m. in the evening. It's an hour each day, and you are guaranteed you'll work directly with Nadia, and you're guaranteed to leave with 5 practical tools that you can use in business and in life to manage this thing called fatigue, burnout, and resistance to change. I'll post that link in the chat. But thank you for having me. Flat, my story is 8. I hope that this has been of some value.
Thanks so much, Gary. That was absolutely brilliant. I'm going to stop recording now so our participants and guests can leave. Thanks to everyone who's joined today. Keep in touch, stay safe, and we'll no doubt chat to you or see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you, Gary. Bye.
Thank you.